I'm just going to say this right now at the top. I love this movie. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dads of Dagobah with our review and our what we'll change, what we love about Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
I love Rogue One as well. I have very little that I would change about it, but because I felt like we were making this video, I did rewatch the movie and I did take notes. And there's some nitpicky things that I can mention, but overall, even through the nitpicky things, it's like it doesn't bother me enough to want to change this movie. I think it's great. Gave us high hopes in 2016 when it came out for these standalone movies. Like, wow, they're going to make some awesome movies.
How wrong we were. Let's start from the beginning, like we did the other one. We open on the planet Lamu.
With no crawl. No crawl. Once again, I said in the solo, I wish these all had crawls.
Doing this note write-up, it made me realize that I feel like this opening scene acts as the opening crawl. It sets up the protagonist, the antagonist, the hero, the conflict. It gives us everything we need in about 7 minutes. We have Death Troopers. We have Orson Krennic, who is a great villain, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Love Orson Krennic. And then we have the Urso family.
Yeah, so in their homestead, we get to see a few little Easter eggs. We get to see some blue milk sitting out. We see them communicating with, obviously, Saw Gerrera, which is the first instance, right, of this huge nod to the fans of the animated series, because Saw Gerrera originally was a character in the Clone Wars animated series when he's a younger, maybe even adolescent, teenager, or in his early 20s or something, and he's a freedom fighter on his planet in the cartoon. And then now to see him live action as an older man, that continuity was really exciting for a lot of fans. Like, oh wow, they're gonna have connective tissue between the animated movies and now the live action movies, and we see some more of that connective tissue later in the movie as well. Just little Easter eggs. But I did think on Lamu, first of all, yeah, I thought Krennic is perfect. Great introduction. When he comes in, obviously the Jin is running and they're trying to get out of there and run away. And when I was watching on Sunday night, I thought to myself, why did they land so far away? Where they had to walk,
they walk
so far. It gives the Ursos more time than they need to pack everything up and get out of that house. And it's like and then they're just like slowly moseying towards the homestead. I'm like, Krennic, listen, park the shuttle a little bit closer, all right? Catch them a little bit more by surprise. Don't let them get their plans in order, all right?
The Empire has a problem. The Empire, yeah, that's one of their fatal flaws.
And then we get this sequence of they're obviously trying to escape, and Lyra, the mother, is supposed to take Jin to the hideout while Galen, deals with Krennic or goes with Krennic or whatever the plan is to try to get away. And I was watching this on Sunday, on Mother's Day, and I couldn't help but feel very strongly that Lyra Urso is possibly the worst mother in all of Star Wars.
I didn't either. I did not understand it. Why did she abandon Jin?
It is so unrealistic. A mother's love. I was talking about it with my wife. Like, if this was a situation that we were in, and you and I, as husband and wife, agreed, you as their mother are going to take the children and try to protect them, and I'm going to go do this to protect all of you so that they don't know that you're there, and then you leave, you don't even get the child to the drop-off point. You get halfway there, hand her a kyber crystal and say, trust in the Force. And you're like, what? And then you leave to go back for your husband. It doesn't make any sense. She abandoned Jin. It makes no sense.
And she
then
gained
I'm
nothing.
sorry,
She didn't get anything from it.
and I'm sorry, but her plan once she does abandon Jin has to be the worst plan in the history of plans. Like, her death is completely ridiculous. Like, what did she think was going to happen? What did she think she was going to gain from pulling out a gun with Death Troopers and Krennic and everybody right there? Like, she was going to negotiate with them and they were going to let them go? I don't understand what just happened.
Anything, get a little sniper's nest and pick them off from afar. Don't just like stand up in the field 10 feet from them and be like, hey, yo, we're going to talk about this.
I also feel like the whole trust in the Force Kyber crystal scene, I think that they could have done a better job. This is nitpicky. Better job in the movie of fleshing out that story a little bit more. Jin never really ever goes back to that other than when Chirrut knows she has a necklace of Kyber crystal. And then I think at one point she says, may the Force be with us. But we never have to see Jin ever trust in the Force. So it's like, is it just, they're just trying to show that Lyra's mom was a follower of the Force and believed in the Force? Or like what? It was like this emotional, her last send-off, the last words to her daughter, trust in the Force. And then we never have to see Jin ever do that again.
In the backstory in the book Catalyst, which came out a month before, it talks about the backstory of the friendship of Orson and Galen and Lyra, how they're good friends. And we kind of see a glimpse of that in Rogue One when they're on Coruscant and we see them as friends. But she is a scientist of Kyber crystals, and she goes around to try and find Kyber crystals, and that kind of sparks Orson's kind of curiosity. Anyway, she's not, I guess, technically not a Jedi, but she is a Force believer, Force follower. Let's continue on, shall we? We transition next to the ring of Kafrene? How do we say that?
Yeah, Kafrene. I don't know. I appreciate that Rogue One went off script here and started to label the planets and locations we were going to, which makes me wonder why we didn't get that label for Lamu at the beginning. That's the only planet we don't get a label for.
Also Mustafar.
Oh, yeah, and Mustafar, too. You're right. But, yeah, because in this first 20-25 minutes, we're going to a few different places that you don't know what they are. I like that they gave us labels. But, yeah, so we're on the Ring of Kafrene, and we see Cassian meeting with his informant. It's a short sequence, but pretty important and pretty powerful in my mind.
I think it is it right there sets the tone of this is a different movie. Of course, it's for kids, but it's like this is not a childy kind of Star Wars-y fun movie. This is a serious thing. The rebellion is in the depths of the underworld trying to survive, and I thought it was such a great way to show it. You kind of feel for the guy who gets shot. You're like, oh, dang, was that? Oh, God, okay, well. It's exciting to see that we're going to have more Cassian Andor stories with his new series because he's such an interesting character. You know, we see him at the beginning of this movie where he's already hardened. So it will be interesting to see kind of what his backstory is, how he gets to that point.
Think of all the original trilogy movies, the prequel trilogy movies, and the sequel trilogy movies. It's the Resistance are the good guys, the First Order are the bad guys. The Rebels are the good guys, the Empire are the bad guys. The Republic's the good guys, the Separatists are the bad guys. This scene brought some realism to the rebellion. The Rebels and the rebellion also are doing morally questionable things. Anyway,
the next planet is Wobani,
which is an anagram
of Obi-Wan.
Hello there.
Hello there.
That's right.
I'm going to get into one of my favorite little parts. I know this is a short scene, and the part I like is even shorter. You see the hunched over stormtrooper in that turbo tank, just like, I hate my life. I love that. I love just him, just like, you know. And then he's like, and then the turbo tank stops. He's like, what is it? What happened now? You know, they're just like so ticked. You know, the further away they are from Central HQ, the less polished they are as stormtroopers.
But we get a great intro of K2SO.
Congratulations. You are being rescued. Please do not resist.
Yep.
which I think is a fan favorite character. Obviously, he's a great droid character.
And then we go to Yavin 4, where we see the resistance. We see the rebellion, the rebellion. I think they just did a great job this whole thing. They brought back Mon Mothma, the actress who played her in the deleted scene of Revenge of the Sith. They brought her back. They brought back Bail Organa, which is so perfect. I love it. And
with again when he walks in, the perfect music.
And if I do it,
we'll make sure you go free.
It's just like, you just feel in that moment, you're like, oh my gosh, it's Jimmy Smits.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this Yavin 4 stuff. And this kind of gets into a little bit about the trailer for I think the original trailer that we got like 8 months before the movie came out. This was kind of like the main part of the trailer, which talked about I Rebel. It's kind of a very different feel than what we got in the final movie. We talked about these reshoots and stuff. I don't mind that there's differences between the trailer and the final movie. Also, they introduced my new favorite ship, the U-Wing.
So then we get a scene where we see the Death Star being built. And this is our first glimpse at the technology that they used to bring back one Peter Cushing in the role of Grand Moff Tarkin. I think he looks, all things considered, fantastic. I agree. I really like that they brought him back. It brings continuity, obviously, for the original trilogy.
It's interesting that you and I have this, because I think it looks great. My wife thinks he looks terrible. But it was so interesting because before the movie, we had no idea of we knew that Tarkin would be in it, but we didn't know how he'd be in it. And I think even you and I talked like, oh, could it be like a hologram? Could it be like, we just hear his voice. We don't actually see him. But instead, they went with the very gutsy move of, put him right there, right in front of the camera and let us see him. And I thought they did a great job. I also get, though, I watched it just a few hours ago. I can get why some people don't like him because you can kind of tell. He is far less jarring, in my opinion, than the Princess Leia at the very end of the movie.
Hope.
And that could be a matter of she's more well lit, and he's always filmed in darker spaces. So the shadows kind of help kind of mask the discrepancies, but while she's like full light, I think he looks great. Let's talk about Jeddah.
So we get to Jeddah. The first thing I want to talk about on Jeddah is with Saw and his partisans is the signature weird creature monster thing that always ruins every Star Wars movie and doesn't make sense. Borg Gullet.
Borg Gullet.
I don't get it. I don't understand what it brings to the table. What does it actually do for the plot? Like, honestly, answer me this, Sean. What does it do? It reads your mind and makes you go crazy? Is that it?
Let me tell you what it does. First of all, it looks like a zombie octopus Pokemon. That's what it looks like. At this point, I'm thinking to myself with Saw Gerrera, why do you have this thing? My questions, is Borg Gullet sentient? Does it talk and communicate to Saw and let him know this is what I'm getting when I'm reading this dude's mind? Like, how does Borg Gullet communicate to Saw what he is reading out of the people's minds? Is it a prisoner of Saw's? He like has it in a cage, like, so it's now, there's so many things about it.
How did it stay so glistening in a desert planet?
Then we're supposed to believe that Bodhi loses his mind because Borg Gullet makes you lose your mind. But really, when they're in the cell, Cassian just has to mention the name Galen Erso, which breaks him out of his hypnosis. Then we go into Jeddah City, and Cassian and Jyn are walking around.
Oh, I love this.
Awesome. This is like the This makes me feel like A New Hope when old Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker go into Mos Eisley. And I'm like, there's so many cool things to look at. And what is life in this world and on this planet? Like, this is so interesting to see this society, what's going on.
Just walking around too, you know? I love Jeddah City. I love all these scenes here. I love the introduction of Baze and Chirrut. Why can't we have a Disney Plus show about them? Because I think they make this movie so much fun. They are such fun characters. And it's interesting, you know, Jeddah is this planet of, you know, Kyber crystal. That's the whole reason why the Empire is there. Also, just the Star Destroyer hovering over the city. It's just awesome. I just love it.
So when she first is introduced to Chirrut, he's obviously blind, but he can perceive her Kyber crystal. At this part of the movie, I think to myself, are we going to find out more about her mother, Lyra? Like, is this the connection here that, okay, these two aren't Jedi, but they have a connection to the Force. They're guardians of the Wills. Another little Easter egg about George Lucas's original treatment for Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And all this stuff, I'm like, oh, okay. Was Jin's mom a guardian of the Will? And so she has Kyber crystals and is like, I'm thinking there's like all this stuff. And I just, once again, felt unsatisfied that I didn't get a payoff for why does Jin's mom give her a Kyber crystal and say to trust in the Force?
Yeah, maybe the Kyber crystal could be like a beacon or something to Chirrut to be like, oh, okay, I can trust this person. This is Lyra's kid. I've been waiting to see this Kyber crystal again, you know, or sense this Kyber crystal.
Right. And you've now informed me and educated me that there's a backstory to Lyra and she's a scientist that studies Kyber crystals. I'm like, all right, that's all well and good, I guess. But you don't know that by watching the movie.
You have to read the book.
Right, you have to read the book. And I just thought that was another opportunity to give more detail to that interaction from the beginning of the movie. But it's still, you know, it's all right. I did think that when they start their fight and they're hanging out in that hallway, and Jin starts to use her baton, there's this sequence of there's like 3 or 4 stormtroopers and she goes out and hits one with the baton. It cuts back to Cassian and he's like watching and she goes and hits another one with the baton. I'm like, the other stormtroopers would have shot her dead already. She's taken way too long with these melee attacks.
Listen, the stormtroopers took all of their information from the battle droids. Okay, battle droids just stand in a circle and wait to get sliced by a Jedi.
I also love K2 slapping Cassian.
He is taking us to
quiet. And there's a fresh one if you mouth off again.
And telling him to be quiet. That is so funny. And there's a fresh one for you if you mouth off again. Can I just say too that we're supposed to believe that Jin was part of Saw's partisans and company until she was 16 or whatever, and spent years of her life with them, and was his most capable soldier or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. And now they're being transported in to see him after that urban warfare, and nobody recognizes her. There's not a single indication that anyone knows who she is. I'm like, wasn't she a part of this crew? Like, how does it, not one person is going to be like, hey, Jin, what's going on? Or Jin's back, or whispering or anything. It's just everyone's looking at him like, we don't know who that is. We have another prisoner girl in here. All right. I don't know who that is. It bothered me. Someone needs to recognize her. I need a Dexter Jetster type moment where some alien is elated to see Jin again.
Obi-Wan!
Yes.
Then we have the scenes where the Death Star shows up. Awesome. Couldn't be cooler. Coming in upside down over the horizon.
It's so good, and in my mind, masterful that they lined it up with the silhouette, the eclipsing of the sun and everything like that, with Galen's message to Jin explaining his plan and how he has sabotaged the Death Star. This whole plot point was incredibly clever to me. I loved that Galen was resigned to the fact that he couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop the construction and the completion of this battle station, but he knew he could create a flaw or a defect in it that could give hope to the galaxy and hope to the rebels to defeat the Death Star. So that was really, I liked that plot point, because in the New Hope, you just think, oh, the engineers of the Death Star just were really stupid and they left this, vent open, and basically the whole thing blows up. And wow, that was a huge design flaw there.
Yeah, it's kind of like this huge plot hole. You're like, oh, okay, but everything's okay now, you know?
Whereas in Rogue One, I think it gives so much more depth and texture to kind of that story of, okay, this was sabotage by Galen Erso, the chief engineer of the Death Star, basically. So yeah, I like that whole sequence with the Death Star blowing up Jeddah, Galen's message, Krennic being completely hardened to the fact
against my achievements.
Well, before that, him being completely hardened to the fact that he just murdered thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and he's just looking at it and goes, "It's beautiful." Like, you just murdered a whole population of people, bro.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And he just thinks it's awesome. So they go straight from Jeddah and start going to Edu. But before they left for Jeddah, the rebel General Draven had given Cassian the order to kill Galen Erso.
Yes.
And so now that they're on their route to Edu, Cassian is on the communications link with the rebel base on Yavin, and he gets a reiteration of the orders. And I wrote down a note about this because General Draven, this rebel general now, is saying, we don't know what he's building. He says, quote, "We don't know what he is building. We have to kill Galen Erso." And I'm like, they just told you that the thing's already built. Jeddah is destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, the thing works.
We're way past the point of killing the engineer.
Yeah, he already...
At the ribbon cutting, they're like, "Hey, architect, bow!"
He already built it, you bozo. Like, we don't need to kill him. The best thing you could do at this point is bring him in for questioning to try to see if there's any vulnerabilities.
Yeah, if you trust him or not, get him alive and bring him in.
It makes no sense that this dumb rebel general is like, yeah, you know what? We don't know we don't know what they're building. You're just gonna need to kill him. Well, it's already built, so.
Edu is this is kind of where the movie slows down for me a bit. Not that anything bad happens or anything boring happens. The attack of the X-Wings and the Y-Wings on the base, and they're the reason why Galen Erso dies, is quite the twist that I feel like Jin never really gets over for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I don't have a lot I would change about Edu, but yeah, it's not like the blockbuster moments of the movie. I did think it was interesting when he's trying to weed out the traitor, and he's like, well, since nobody admitted to it, I'll take it that it was a group effort. And so he tells his death troopers to, ready, aim, like he's going to do a firing squad. And this is really nitpicky, but if you notice when you watch the movie, he says, ready, aim, fire.
Ready? Aim!
And probably a half second after he says fire, Galen Erso runs over and is like, "No, wait, stop. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, why didn't any of them fire? Because he already said fire. It's not like he went ready.
You really mean it?
I don't think it's not like he said ready, aim, and then Galen said, "No, wait, stop." He already said fire. And none of those troopers fired. And so then I wrote down the note, okay, none of them fired after getting the order. And then Galen is sitting there with his hands across them, trying to protect them. And he's saying, don't shoot, don't shoot. And I'm like, why are they listening to Galen's orders? They just defied Krennic's orders, but then obeyed Galen's orders here. And I'm like, is this a whole conspiracy theory? Did I just uncover something that the Death Troopers never were loyal to Krennic? Like, what's going on here? Because that was definitely insubordination.
insubordinate, and churlish.
I also like, before we leave Edu, when they're getting back on the ship and Jin confronts Cassian and they have their little philosophical discussion about it. I want to side with Jin, but Cassian, in my mind, blows her out of the water in this debate of her. And basically the line where he's like, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. You're not the only one who's lost everything.
Yep.
And then I feel like she doesn't have a good comeback. There's nothing she can say. So she's like, no, you're not going to talk your way out of this one. I'm like, that's not a good comeback. Like, you lose. You just lost the debate because you didn't know what to say. So you just said, you're not going to talk yourself out of this way. And then he comes back with another zinger and he's like, I don't have to. I just destroyed you in our little debate.
Mustafar. Awesome. I've read that the reason why they don't give us a title entry about what planet we're on here is because they wanted the surprise of Darth Vader to play better. Because if they would have told us we're on Mustafar, it would have spoiled what we're about to see. I love that we see Darth Vader again in the Bacta tank in his. Even though we don't see as much as I would have liked to have seen, it's totally fine, and I love it, and it totally plays well. In Empire Strikes Back, we get the little kind of the sliver of it's a human head. He is human, and this is kind of the same moment where, okay, there is some man that's part of this machine.
How crazy would it have been if, when we see Bacta Vader in his little Bacta tube, if when that drained, if we would have just gotten a little bit of a shot of the face and it was Hayden's face from
That's what
episode
I was
3.
in theaters. I thought we would see a little, exactly that, just a little bit of, burnt up Hayden Christensen. But
that would have been awesome. But we didn't get that, but that's fine. I also felt like, and this is nitpicky again, the conversation between Vader and Krennic, the voice, the Darth Vader voice, is a little bit off for me. It's obviously still James Earl Jones. It's not a different voice, but clearly he's 40 years older than when he voiced the character in 1977 for A New Hope.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
An Imperial facility openly attacked?
And the voice just sounds, because of that 40 years of, maturing of his voice, it is a little bit different for me. And I notice it every time. It's just nitpicky. It's not bad, and it doesn't ruin the movie for me by any means. But I do notice it every time. Like, the voice is a little bit different for me than
it
what I
also
expected.
sounds like they tried to edit the voice and try and de-age it, if that's even a thing. Like, it sounds a little too unnatural, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know how James Earl Jones sounds now, but I would assume it has kind of more of that tenor of, an older person, an older man. And I wonder if they tried to, work their magic and de-ageify it. But
I mean, if you think about it, that'd be like with the Princess Leia CGI character at the end, if they tried to get Carrie Fisher to voice that. It's like, that's not going to work. She's not going to sound now like she sounded like when she was 19.
Uh-huh.
So,
what do you think of the pun?
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, Director.
it doesn't bother me, and a lot of people hated it.
Doesn't bother me at all. Doesn't bother me at all.
A lot of people were so upset. And I think that Vader does little quips like that in the original trilogy, where he like chokes out that guy and then he's like,
Apology accepted, Captain Nida.
okay. Is he like doing that? Apology accepted, and then looking around at the like, anyone? Anyone think that was funny? Because he just apologized to me, but then I killed him. But then I said I accepted his apology. Like, wasn't that funny, guys? Anyone?
Yeah, even like the no disintegration. Like, that's got to be something, right? Is that a joke? What?
It was a little bit on the nose. It was a little bit in your face of like, okay, while you're force choking him, you're referencing choking. Like, but it didn't bother me. You got to remember, on some level, this is still Anakin Skywalker.
Yep. I was going to say that. There's still Anakin in there.
And if you learn anything about Anakin in episodes 1, 2, and 3, that dude says some weird stuff.
You are in my very soul, tormenting me.
General Grievous, you're shorter than I expected.
I don't like sand.
I don't like sand. I think we go back to Yavin 4 next, where we have that scene, like you mentioned earlier, the
Now we get
Council
the
of the
council.
Rebellion.
The Death Star kind of, I think, played the rebellion's hand of they had to commit, are we really going to be a rebellion? Where we're really going to try to overthrow this empire? Or are we just going to kind of be a nuisance in the Outer Rim to the Imperial forces, you know?
Yeah, Grand Moff Tarkin, like you said in his earlier statement of, this is a statement. We don't need to destroy the planet. We just need to make a statement. It very much did that thing. You know, it kind of shook the rebellion to its core. Like, you know, what are we really? Are we really going to go up against this thing?
And leave it to the Mon Calamari to be all in on the aggressiveness.
Admiral Raddus, I honestly may like him more than Akbar.
It's a trap!
Which is strange because, like, they're both kind of the fun, but, like, Raddus is so cool.
I say we fight. This is Admiral Raddus of the Rebel Alliance. There's no turning back now. We have to press the attack. Call up a Hammerhead Corvette. I have an idea. Rogue One, may the Force be with you.
Like, so awesome. We also get a little Easter egg from Chopper in this scene, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Not only do we get that, but what we get the conversation between Bail and Mon Mothma about your Jedi friend. I'll send for him. And he says, I got to get back to Alderaan. And I'm always like, don't do it, Bail. Don't, whatever you do, don't go back to Alderaan.
Oh.
You're going to your death, Bail Organa.
And he talks a little bit about his daughter, right? He trusts her, right?
Yeah, trust her with my life.
We get to Scarif. First of all, the promo images for this movie were heavy on this tropical planet with stormtroopers. That got me excited. I think they did a fantastic job with Scarif. Scarif to me is probably, you know, I talked about how much I love Jeddah. I love Scarif. Scarif is so cool, and I think it might have something to do with it was featured prominently in the DLC for Battlefront, and we got to, you know, play a lot of levels there and do some games there. It's just such a cool planet that it's guarded by this huge planet-wide shield. It's the archives of the Empire.
Oh, I think it's the best part of the movie. I love the tone that is set by Jin's speech to the group while they're landing on Scarif. They get through the shield gate and they're going down, and basically she says, she does the Saw Gerrera quote, which I think is a great quote, that a man with a sharp stick and nothing to lose can win the day. Mm-hmm. That, you know, they don't know we're coming type of thing. Make the 10 men feel like 100. But I really love the whole speech she gives on, we're going to keep taking chances until our chances are spent. Like, This is probably, they all recognize, this is probably a suicide mission.
This is kind of where a lot of I guess the third act was where most of the rewrites happened. And I think from some of the trailers, we saw them storming the beach and doing other things, and other stormtroopers that were on the beach and more fights. I also think they encountered Darth Vader on the planet surface of Jeddah was one of the original ideas. But one of the funniest things that I thought was interesting was the writers of the script. They didn't know how receptive Disney would be about everyone dying at the end. And so they went into the pitch meeting and they showed them the draft, and Disney had no problem with everyone dying in the end. Like,
kill them all.
Like, yeah, it makes sense. Everyone has to die. Like, they're not in any other movies.
Well, first, so there's a lot of stuff that happens on Scarif. You got the ground battle. You got the K2SO, Cassian and Jin trying to get the plans plot, and you have the space battle, and it's all interweaved. So as I was taking notes, it was like I had notes on the space battle, but then it went back to the ground battle. So I'm doing that, and then it goes back to space battle. I'm like, all right, I gotta like compartmentalize this, because really through that whole last 40 minutes of the movie on Scarif, every scene I'm like, I love this. I have thoughts on this. This is great. And actually, when you said before the deaths, K2SO is actually the first death. When he
that's right.
When he locks down the vault because the stormtroopers keep coming in, and locks Jin and Cassian in there, and so they have to start climbing to go manually retrieve the plans. His last stand, so awesome. Such a great character. And his is quickly followed after that by Chirrut's death, because he has to flip the master switch to get the communication up so Bodhi can send the plans up. So Chirrut dies next, doing the I'm one with the Force prayer chant.
The Force is with me.
I'm one with the Force is with me.
Yeah, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me.
We hear that in the end of Clone Wars, right?
Yeah, they brought that back.
When Ahsoka is mind melding with Rex, right? Trying to find the chip.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
But yeah, I liked that Chirrut, that whole sequence of him doing the prayer chant and just walking out in a blaze of glory with the gauntlet. And then the will of the Force has been fulfilled, and Chirrut dies.
Yep.
And I feel like that is a great representation of kind of the Force guiding, the cosmic Force guiding the events of, life and sentient life.
Once what needs to happen happens, then no longer needed, I guess. His purpose was completed. Doesn't Baze die shortly after, right?
Yeah, after Chirrut, it's Bodhi. So Bodhi dies next with the grenade into the ship. And I had to say, with Bodhi's death, he gets the plans up, and then they throw the grenade in. And if you look, the trooper who throws the grenade in is maybe 5 feet outside of that ship, off that ramp. He's like right next to the ramp, and he throws it in. And then when that ship explodes, that like whole landing pad explodes. I'm like, did that trooper just kill himself? Like, what? He saw a random dude in there, and he's like, all I got is this thermal imploder. I'm throwing it in. Causes a massive explosion. He's like, oh, this was not a good choice.
Should have set the timer for a little bit longer.
Oh, gosh. But yeah, after that, Bodhi dies. And this is like they just start dropping like flies at this point. And it is kind of like an emotional thing. Like, man, we only got these characters for one movie, but each of these deaths I feel like is pretty poignant. And you feel like, wow. Like they're all going down, and so Baze goes next, or he takes out all the Death Troopers with his last act, gazes over at Chirrut, and kind of regains his faith at the end of the movie. So that was kind of cool. We then go to Jin and Krennic up on the top of the Citadel Tower with the satellite dish, and their little exchange. And if you want to jump in, but it makes me laugh every time I watch and see Krennic come up with the gun, and she bluffs and says that she's already sent the plans, even though she has not yet. And he asks, "Who are you?" And I think in my mind, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Some chit chat? We're doing some small talk, Krennic? What do you mean, who are you? Like, who cares? From Krennic's
he saw her on Edu, didn't he?
I guess, but I mean, it was dark and raining on Edu, and she did have a cap on, and I'm like, he was pretty far away. I'm like, did you really recognize her?
Okay.
The point in my mind is, he's like, who are you? And I'm like, this isn't realistic. If he is real, if I was him and I'm really trying to gain control of this situation that is quickly getting out of hand, and I get up on that tower and that person is there, I'm shooting that person immediately.
Yeah.
I'm not asking who are you, right?
Tell me about yourself.
I'm igniting my lightsaber faster than Anakin Skywalker in a Jedi Council room full of younglings, all right? And for the record, that's really fast.
This is where the fun begins.
Yeah, he didn't let them ask any. Well, I guess he let them ask one question.
Tarkin fires the single reactor ignition and takes out Krennic. The laser bolt goes right through the dish and takes out Krennic, which is poetic.
You can kind of see it too in his eye. I think there's even a reflection of the laser beam come, and you know how you mentioned earlier about how he said it's beautiful. You almost get a sense that that's what he's thinking at the end. It's beautiful, before it gets zapped.
Yeah, and then Jyn and Cassian's death scene I thought was pretty well handled.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's ambiguous about any romantic feelings. I did not want them to be like, let's share one last kiss before we die. Mm-hmm. It's very much just an embrace of, we did it, we did this together. We started out kind of as these, at odds, controversial, contentious relationship, and we were able to work together and get it done for the cause.
Let's go up to the space battle. Easily the best space battle of any Star Wars movie, in my opinion. We get the Y-Wings actually doing something for once instead of flying in a straight line and doing absolutely nothing in Episode 4. I love this space battle. There's nothing wrong about this whole thing.
I agree with you. And a lot of people still hold the Return of the Jedi space battle as number one. And I am, as you know, with all the rankings we do, I am very loyal to the original trilogy. But it is easy for me to say and agree with you that this is the best space battle.
Oh, yeah.
This is so phenomenal. It has so many things going for it. First of all, we get Blue Squadron, which is a new squadron, but still couched with Gold Squadron and Red Squadron, and we get the old footage of Gold Leader and Red Leader, which is like so awesome that they were able to incorporate that. But then at the same time, you get attached to Blue Leader more than either Gold Leader or Red Leader. Like, I loved Blue Leader. I'm like, this guy's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And Blue Squadron obviously is trying to get down to the surface, and some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them will crash right into the shield gate. But I love Blue Squadron down on Scarif with the U-Wing and doing their thing to help the ground troops. At one point where they're reinforcing out of the U-Wing, and some soldiers jump out of the U-Wing, and one of them goes, "For Jeddah!"
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I'm like, is he from Jeddah? Or is it just like, does he have any connection to Jeddah? Or is it like
I think they had heard what happened on Jeddah, and they're getting revenge for their friends who passed there.
Similar to Sam Houston and his boys going against Santa Anna in the Republic of Texas. They had not been at the Alamo, but they shouted, "Remember the Alamo."
Remember the Alamo!
There's your Texas history for you.
I love all the ships coming in out of hyperspace. Like the call to arms was there, and they all came running. They all came to support their boys. Like, it's one of those moments where you just get goosebumps. You're like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is like the rebellion. The Hammerhead Corvettes and their use against destroying the Star Destroyers. Like, how cool is that? Who would have thought that was a tactic to be used in space?
Yeah, that scene particularly, I feel like, takes it to the next level, because I feel like other space battles, even the really good ones in Star Wars, we don't get to see a lot of that strategy taking place. And so one of the reasons I love Admiral Raddus so much in Rogue One is we get to see him orchestrating this battle from his command ship. And he's the admiral surveying what's going on, and he in the spur of the moment works with what he's got, and he realizes that Star Destroyer is disabled. And he thinks about it for a second. He's like, bring me a Hammerhead Corvette. Like, I got an idea, and we're going to execute this real quick. And just such an awesome thing. The visual of that Star Destroyer colliding with the other Star Destroyer is, like, phenomenal. It is such good cinematography. I know it's all CGI. They aren't actually in space. But, I mean, it's just so good. The visual, I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
I also like that they included, a lot of times in Star Wars space battles, the capital ships are just kind of there, and it's really just small fighters doing all the fighting. But this one we see, and even then we don't really see too much, but we do see a little bit of capital ships going at each other. So that's another reason why I enjoyed it.
I really liked the little Easter egg of seeing Red 5 and his demise.
He went out like a champ.
Yeah, where he's like, Red 5, what are you doing, Red 5? And it's funny because you hear Red Leader say that, and you get tickled because in the back of your mind you think, that's unused dialogue from A New Hope that they just didn't use.
He's talking to Luke.
He's talking to Luke, but they use it here, and it's just this fun little Easter egg of showing Red 5 was at the Battle of Scarif.
Red 5! I need help!
And dies, which opens up a spot, the call sign Red 5, for a young hotshot from Tatooine, kid from Tatooine that likes to bullseye womp rats back home in Beggar's Canyon.
I used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home.
Luke Skywalker, Red 5, reporting for duty.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
I feel bad for the guy that ran a little too late to the game and got caught by the shield and just kind of glided across.
It just was a great, great space battle. You get to see inside the cockpits of a lot of the pilots and their, banter back and forth of what's going on. And I feel like that was missing from the Battle of Exegol with Rise of Skywalker. I haven't rewatched Rise of Skywalker since it's been on Disney Plus. I haven't rewatched Rise of Skywalker yet. I do want to, but my recollection of that space battle is that we are only in the cockpit of Poe Dameron that entire time.
We have a little bit of Millennium Falcon and Zori Bliss.
It's just so crazy to watch the Battle of Scarif compared to the Battle of Exegol. Like, Rogue One did it right. Rise of Skywalker did not.
Okay, but the coolest scene to me is the end. They got the plans. Raddus has them. They're leaving. They're going to hyperspace, and then blammo. It is so awesome that Vader's ship comes in just like out of nowhere, and they just crash right into it, and they're like, oh, now it's about to go down.
All ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace.
Not only does he come in, I love seeing that some of those smaller cruisers at the last second try to course correct, right? And they can't, and they crash into the hull of the Star Destroyer. And so, yeah, Vader comes in and just crashes the party and destroys those ships. And coincidentally, also destroying the plot of The Last Jedi, because it shows us that Super Star Destroyers or Star Destroyers can come in on a dime from Lightspeed and corner a rebel fleet. So there's none of this slow speed car chase just out of reach of our cannons. There's no way for us to catch up to these people. We're just going to have to wait till they run out of fuel.
You're saying in The Last Jedi they should have done a micro jump to hyperspace?
They should have sent half of the dadgum fleet 2 light years that way and then have him come back this way, and then we surround him. Like, why are we all just following behind? It makes no sense.
Let's talk about this final scene on the Tantive 4. It is so fantastic.
First of all, we never get to see, because of the limitations of the original trilogy and George Lucas not understanding yet the full scope of the Jedi and the Force and how he was going to stage and produce lightsaber fights in the future, we never see Vader like this in the original trilogy. The fact that he just annihilates these poor people, like the feeling of hopelessness and despair as these people are trying to escape, it's like, you're all going to die.
You have no chance.
He's so dominant in this scene that it actually made me think, during my rewatch of this, it made me think, how is it that he isn't able to retrieve these plans? Like, he easily should have been able to get these plans with how he is cutting through these people like a hot knife.
Running, just grab that guy.
That's what I was going to say, is I wrote down the note. He's dominant. He's cutting through these people like a hot knife through butter, and he uses the Force to choke them or throw them up to the ceiling and then cut them in half or whatever. Pulls some. But I'm like, why doesn't he ever use the Force to secure the plans? That's what I don't understand. I guess my question is, does he even know they have the plans at that point? Like, does he know that the men running away from him have the plans to the Death Star? Or is he just thinking, I'm boarding this ship and I'm going to start, because I've just boarded it, these are the people that are defending it, I'm going to start killing them all. He obviously knows at the beginning of A New Hope that the plans have been stolen. But
I wonder if, I don't know. He doesn't really state his intentions of what he's actually doing there. He's just like, hello, I'm here to kill you now. Even when the doors are shutting and people are getting through and the plants are leaving, he's like still wasting his time on the other guys. He's like, well, so like you guys, like, oh, the door's closing. I said, fine, I'm having too much fun here, you know.
This is where the fun begins.
That first guy that can't open the door, so he says, take it, take the plans, take it. And you see, as he's handing off the plans, Vader stabs him through the door and the door opens. I'm like, he is 3 feet away from those plans. You're telling me that he can't Force grab those out of the air?
That's not how the Force works.
Or bring that guy, Force grab that guy? Anyway, it doesn't ruin the movie for me because obviously it has to happen that way for the original trilogy to make sense.
What if it was Darth Vader's fighting and he's slicing those people left and right and he's Force grabbing the plans, and all of a sudden it's like, you think it's going to go to his hand, but it doesn't, and it flips behind him and it goes into Leia's hand and she Force grabs the plans herself. What if that was it? We know Leia's a Force user. She uses a lightsaber in episode 9. Hey, I got something. I'm going to write to Gareth Edwards. Hey, the ending of the movie sucked.
I will take your idea of Leia pulling a Rey on Starkiller Base with Kylo Ren and the lightsaber. And I'll raise you another Leia Force power. And instead, we see where Leia gets the power we see her display in The Last Jedi. And instead, as the Tantive is starting to pull away, we see Vader, like Superman, fly out into the vacuum of space and just pull on to the Tantive 4, and he is trailing that sucker through space. And he is the original McGonagalling himself back to Hogwarts.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
To board the Tantive. And the actual end of Rogue One is him out in the vacuum of space coming up to one of the loading docks and stabbing his way with his lightsaber through one of the ports, and then starts episode 4 when he walks through the door. And I guess to make that work, he would actually have to be force dragging some stormtroopers behind him as well, and they're all flailing behind him, and he's dragging while he's holding onto them with one hand and holding onto the Tantive with the other, and he's got a trail of stormtroopers. Yeah, this definitely should have been the ending of the movie.
That's some plot holes in their movie we just filled.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we love Rogue One. We think it's a fantastic movie.
Yes.
Most of the things that we've discussed that we would change tonight are very nitpicky. They aren't things that we actually are upset about. They're just things that we've noticed.
Or Gullet is the only thing.
Yeah, and even with it in, I don't think it's a bad movie because Bor Gullet's in it. But yeah, leave comments down below. We are always interested in hearing what you think of these movies. Most of our friend group and most of the people we associate with that I know of love Rogue One, but I'm curious to see if there's anyone out there that doesn't like Rogue One and why they don't like Rogue One, because there are people out there and I'm curious to hear those opinions. But we're excited to keep going with this. Our next video is going to be episode 4, A New Hope. We're heading into original trilogy territory here. Until next time, Joseph, it's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time on Dads of Dagobah.